Hello, everybody. Well, thanks, everybody, for coming. We're so glad to have you here for the first of our 3 events, Meet the Media and Beyond, Strategies for Getting Your Firm Seen, Heard, and Hired. I'm Tammy Hausman. I'm the chair of the Oculus Committee of the AIA New York chapter, which you all know. We produced this publication, as is Paul Makowski, the brilliant editor of Architect Magazine. He paid me $1 million to say that. And we've been organizing this series of panels. There's 3 starting tonight with Meet the Editors. And we were talking about all the things that architects can do to help editors do their work, and then how the editors can help firms get promoted for all the great work that you do. So we also thought that it wasn't just one panel, although meeting the editors was great, but there's so many ways for architects and design firms to get noticed. So we put together a series of 3 panels to show all the ways that firms can get visibility. So we have a really great panel tonight. They're all going to introduce themselves. It's really the best of the best, and I'm going to let them tell you what they do and who they are. Unfortunately, Jack Murphy is sick, so Dan Roche will be playing the part of Jack in this evening's performance. And we're really glad to have you here, Dan, as well as Joanne and Elisaveta. This series is sponsored by the AIA Oculus Committee, which I chair, and Paul is also on the Oculus Committee, and also the AIA Marketing Committee. So if you like this panel, we hope that you will join us on March 4th for Recognition Comes in Many Colors, Competitions, Awards, and Speaking Opportunities. And then the last in the series is on April 1st, which is Dial Up Your Digital, Non-Traditional, and Social Media. So I'll hand things over to Paul. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot. My name is Paul Makowski. I'm the editor-in-chief of Architect Magazine. I've been in the business many, let's say, decades now, but I was at Metropolis Magazine for a long time, and then at Contract Magazine, and then came over to Architect Magazine.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Jonas Roach. I'm the news editor at the Architect's newspaper. I do a lot of the web and print writing for the newspaper. I've been there full-time for 3 years. I also teach at the New School and spent many years prior to working full-time as a freelancer.
I'm Joanne Goncher. I'm deputy editor at Architectural Record, which is a 133-year-old magazine. I haven't been there that whole time, but a long time. I'm an architect, but haven't practiced in quite a while. And yeah.
And Joanne, you got an award. Plug yourself.
Yes, I recently won an award from AIA New York State, but President's Award. And now I'm embarrassed.
Oh, and the other thing, too, is you're connected to Oculus as well.
Yes, I'm on the advisory committee for Oculus, which Tammy leads and Paul is on also.
And I'm Elisaveta Brandon. I'm a freelance journalist. I write about design, architecture, urbanism, materials, you name it. I've probably written about it. I mostly contribute to Fast Company, which I think is what's on the bio, but I write for lots of other magazines as well, including Wired, Condé Nast, Monocle, and many, many others that I won't just list. That's me.
Great. Okay, so the basic idea today is we'd like you to all get a better understanding of how to get published. And I think there's going to be a number of things that are pretty universal, but then at the same time, each different platform and different media actually do things slightly different. Maybe we could start with some easy questions like, what do you cover? So I'll start with Dan.
Thanks, Paul. So I have sort of 3 focus areas that oscillate between scales. The most immediate issue for me that I care the most about is affordable housing. I love affordable housing stories, so if you have those, please send them my way. To zoom out to the next scale, I write a lot about infrastructure planning in New York, specifically Penn Station. But prior to working as a journalist, I worked in planning, and so I care very much about that. And then at the sort of macro level, I write a lot about what is happening in national politics. For instance, the story I just published a couple hours ago is that the EPA will no longer regulate greenhouse gas emissions. So that is going to be big. So that's the sort of scale at which I work.
I cover a lot of different things, and I suppose thematically I'm interested. I cover anything that's slightly technical is usually a story that I'll cover. I'm very interested in sustainability and also anything that encompasses social issues, including housing and equity and I'm not sure what else, but yeah, everything. we all at Record we actually all do. The staff really covers everything. I mean, we have titles and we have sort of focus areas, but it's very amorphous, I would say.
Yeah, you call this an easy question, but it's not an easy answer. I cover a lot. Anything that intersects with design is usually how I respond, which by my definition ends up being pretty much everything. For Fast Company in particular, I tend to cover a lot of architecture and design, product design, industrial design, branding, material innovation, tech, culture. The best way that I have found to describe what I like to cover is what captures my curiosity, which is not at all helpful to you, but hopefully, hopefully that's enough for now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess beautiful projects aren't enough, right? I mean, they, in a way, have to be beautiful at the beginning, you know, as a common denominator, but I think have to be relevant. You know, why now, I would say. Are we, you know, going to cover a certain project? You know, does it have some cultural context? And then, of course, the timing, you know, of like, is it finished? And is it ready? I'm curious, like in the next 6 months, if there's certain projects that your story ideas that you're particularly looking for. So, for example, in September, it's going to be the 25th anniversary of 9/11. If you can think about that, 25 years. So obviously, maybe that's something you're all thinking about, or now you're going to start thinking about. But are there some topics in the next, let's say, 6 months or so that you're thinking about? And maybe to, let's say, Joanne, this is where maybe you can talk about your editorial calendar, for
yes,
example.
I would say.
And what that is.
Yeah. So probably all our publications have editorial calendars, which you can find on our website. And they lay out, well, in the case of, they lay out some broad themes. Record, if you're familiar with it, every month has a building type study. So it will list those and then some other themes. And we try not to give it all away because, well, we try not to, we don't want to lock ourselves in too tight because stuff happens. And we also don't want to give it ideas to our competitors. so it's a little, it's sort of a combination of specificity. So people know what to pitch us, and advertisers also know the themes. But also it's a little bit vague. So we have some wiggle room, and we're not giving away all our ideas.
Well, I'm thinking about the 250th anniversary of the country's founding, which is this year. And I've been really interested in the stories that are being told around this anniversary and the sort of the narrative, the way that America is being portrayed right now. So maybe this is more branding. So if I come up with a more architecture-related story, I'll circle back. But I think I'm really interested in the various projects that are sprouting out around this anniversary. There's more of a cultural story around the Route 66 anniversary. The FIFA is coming up, which I'm not at all interested in, but there's lots of activations around the anniversary that overlap with this. So I think it's going to be an interesting year. Everybody's just going to jump on that bandwagon, I think.
So what would your advice be to, let's say, an emerging firm that's been around for 5 years and not 250 years, and is wants to maybe somehow pitch you in some way? What would you tell them?
Find a way to be relevant, I guess, right? Like, to your point, it's not enough. It's great, just I think beauty, we never mean to denigrate a beautiful project. I think it's like an important baseline. But depending on who you're pitching, although I think we're all interested in something that's contextual and relevant, it really matters it helps the editors who don't know your project for you to put it into context and tell me why it matters to you, why it should matter to my audience, so the audience that I write for, and therefore why it doesn't exist in a vacuum. I don't think, frankly, any building should exist in a vacuum today. So I guess I would have to be convinced of that.
What's a project that you've passed on recently, and why? I'm going to start with Joanne, because
I don't know that I want to name projects that we turned down, but
you can say the kind of project, or
but we're only able to publish a tiny amount of what's sent to us, so we turned down quite a lot, unfortunately. Even beautiful projects that are contextual and relevant, because but often sometimes we turn down projects because we published that particular architect too much, or because
sometimes it's because you just published that project, like that typology where you'll get firms.
Well, that's also another.
Saying,
I think that you'll probably have more flexibility since we have this building type study that's existed. I don't know if it's existed for the whole time the magazine has existed, but we're very focused on publishing libraries when we do our civic thing. We're not like, so if we've just published our civic issue and you send us a library, it'll be kind of like, oh, well.
So what's the takeaway here?
Is timing. Look at the editorial calendar, and timing is everything, unfortunately. And there is, record exists. We have a very active website also, but the print publication has about a 3-month, at least 3 months from when we choose projects to when the issue comes out. So if you're looking to be published in our March issue, I'm sorry, you missed the boat.
You have to think of next March, right?
Yeah.
Dan, do you want anything to add to that?
5/1s. About 70% of my inbox in terms of pitches is 5/1s. There's nothing wrong with 5/1s. They're fulfilling a really important demand, but we just get a lot of them, and it's very unlikely that we will publish 5/1.
Do you know what he's talking about? Okay. Explain this.
What's 5/1s?
A 5/1 is, so that's insider baseball. It's the term for the ubiquitous housing type taking hold in exurbs around the country, mostly transit-oriented districts. You have a Walgreens on the ground plane, and then 4 or 5 stories of cookie-cutter housing on top of it. It's basically the single-family suburban home reinvented. It's just ubiquitous, and we don't typically publish those.
Yeah. Oh, and on the same, but on a similar note, that it's so projects that I often just ignore in my inbox is pitches about luxury housing and all the descriptions of all the amenities. And I mean, not that, a really good luxury project we might publish, but don't start with the list of the amenities.
And the retail, the price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's typically not going to get far.
Architect will publish luxury housing.
Yeah.
We do not discriminate.
Yeah. No, but
We believe
would,
in
but it would have to
all facets of life, even
some
if you can't afford
other. It would have to have some other thing going for it. To be the first. I don't know.
So I think two things. One, the takeaway is read the magazines you want to pitch, because there's a lot of times where you'll get a pitch and you can tell that the person pitching has never read your magazine, right? Or, they're even pitching and saying, this is perfect. We think it's perfect for Architect's newspaper. And I'm like, okay, well, we're not Architect's newspaper, right? And then I tell them Jack's email, or they're embarrassed and then they repitch. But the other thing is, if you read their magazine, you get a sense, like, is this right for them? The second thing I think is just ask yourself, so what, right? So you have a project and you say, well, it's sustainable, and you write about sustainability. So what, right? So tell me this kind of elevator pitch, why that story is interesting. So you can take some of these like common typologies, like multi-housing, for example, and then I want to see something interesting about that. Like, is this multi-housing, maybe it's co-living for just women only, or it might be where you're bringing, two disparate groups together, maybe at different ethnicities or something like that, that in the end, the housing itself, which can be interesting or maybe a little more generic, has an interesting story to it. And I think that's something that we're looking for.
Yeah, I'll contradict what I just said about 5/1s. I just got a great pitch today about a 5/1.
He's learning.
There's a great story in Pittsburgh that we were pitched today. It's the first dedicated LGBTQIA senior living community in Pittsburgh. And architecturally, it's a great building, but the innovation is where the nonprofits and the developers were active that were making this project come to life. And so, yeah, it's really all about narrative. Can't emphasize that enough.
Okay, so what does a strong first paragraph of pitch email actually look like?
Facts.
Facts? Facts or facts?
Facts.
Okay.
I personally don't need editorializing or the kind of lead that you would read in a story that I would write. I want to know, again, our inboxes are just chaos. And so first we'll get to the subject line because I want to talk about that. But once you get past the subject line and open the email, I just want to know the 5 W's, the what, when, why, who, what's the last one? And I want to know why this is relevant, I guess, later. I just want to know what I'm dealing with instead of, sometimes I'll get like 4 paragraphs of beautifully written, sometimes by ChatGPT, text, and with flourishes that I just don't have time for. And I'm lost by the time I get to the facts.
Anything else?
No, I think that's true. I mean, you would be surprised. I mean, probably not pitches from architects or PR firms, but often pitches from clients like big institutional owners like hotels. They leave out the architect. Yeah. I mean, like, you're pitching an architecture magazine and you haven't told me who the architect is. So
sometimes people leave out the location.
yes, also that. Or
that makes
yes,
it
I
really
got
confusing.
pitches out a conference that probably everybody knows about, but me, and I was like, where is this? I don't know where the conference is. Probably it was just assumed. So anyway, yes, all the facts.
So in other words, make the life of an editor easy. Yeah. So are we going to talk about pictures and things like that?
Did you say pictures?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are all visual publications. We're all writers, and we love to believe in the power of the writing and the prose and the story, but we won't publish anything without a photo, right? So if it doesn't look great, we probably won't publish it, which means we need to see how it looks early on. That's not to say the photos need to be finalized, depending on how big of a lead time you're dealing with. But yeah, I'd say photos are it's kind of like, I like it when it's formatted at all caps and there's a link to it, and so I can scan the email and immediately see where the link to the images is, and then I'll click on it, like I have to.
Yeah, and we'd keep I like to have an image or two in the email. But small, not a zillion megabytes, and then a link, because if I have to go to the link to see, I have this long description and I have to go to the link to see what it looks like, sometimes I don't go there. Yeah. But I don't want all the images attached because my inbox is exploding.
Yeah, the idea of like if you give 50 images and you want me to look through those, I'll look through just randomly a couple, and then in that way, they better be good, otherwise it's a crapshoot. Yeah. So it's up to you to curate that in a better way. What about how far in advance should you pitch a project?
I would say as early as renderings are available. Even if you're not necessarily interested in having the project pitched at that stage, just sort of getting in our inbox, making us aware of it. Yeah, once you have some nice renderings, I would say that's early enough to reach out to an editor.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends. It's not bad to have it on our radar if it's renderings. We probably wouldn't publish a design reveal unless it's like a very high profile cultural or public project. But if you want it on our radar, if you want the project on our radar, you could send us renderings. If you're targeting most of what we do, most of the project stories that we do are projects that are completed, and I would publish. If you're targeting a certain issue, I would send them at least 3 or 4 months in advance of that issue.
And then be okay with follow-ups, right? Because I think it's the same with Fast Company. I don't think that they would publish. They very, very rarely published renders. To your point, it has to be very zeitgeisty and very popular, which means that if you want it on my radar early, then you would have to rely on me putting it on my calendar, and I might not do that if I'm not interested enough. So you would then have to follow up, which is fine, but there's a little bit of a risk, right, of sort of clogging people's inboxes and saying, "Hey, remember that thing 5 months ago? It's finally ready." It's a bit of a tightrope to walk. It could go either way, I think. I don't know that there's a right
So here's a question: do you publish renderings, like if you have a unbuilt project?
Certainly, and I think this is where we can start to see some contrast between our publications, because I publish renderings all the time. Today, I wrote another story about an 11,000 square foot public library branch in Canarsie, Brooklyn. Small, beautiful community library, and the story was that construction started last week. And so we would typically take something like that on, whereas maybe with Record or Fast Company, you're looking more for finished photography, things of that nature.
Unless we get to talk about the non-development of the line. So we'll publish lots of renders.
Yeah, and just, that always does well with us.
And just diss on it.
Right. But we do, Record probably wouldn't cover that as a ground was broken, construction started for a community library. But we do other stories. A lot of the stories that I do or edit are continuing education stories, and they're almost often thematic. So, and the projects don't need to be done for that. And so in that sense, I'm going to contradict myself, but we might publish a community library as part of a story on a certain theme about. I'm just making it up. I mean, lighting for libraries or something, and so it might land and it might have some interesting story. If it has some interesting technical angle, some interesting angle, other than just construction started, it might say, oh, I saw another project that was doing this, and it might be, this is a theme, this is a trend. And there might be able to find something. Yeah.
Oh, let's talk about submission materials, like what matters and what doesn't. So what materials do you actually open, and when do you ignore?
As in, like, between photos, press releases, that kind of stuff?
The whole package,
Yeah.
Someone's going to pitch you.
Yeah, well, it has to include the project description, right? All the W's, images or renders. A press release is usually helpful if it exists. It doesn't have to. You don't have to craft a press release. What else? Images? Did I say that? I did. That's kind of it, no?
I'm typically a bit allergic to walls of text on the first image. So if I open the email and I'm immediately faced with 5 paragraphs explaining the project, kind of like what you were saying with images, if you don't really curate them, it becomes almost indecipherable and it's very easy to go right to the next email. So typically, I think, unless we have an established relationship, a good solid intro pitch is no longer than 5 sentences, I would say.
I would say if something's sort of newsy and I want to act on it, I want those images that I can use, not an email that would say, I have images to send you.
Yes.
Because we're on deadline. And if you want that story to be published that day or the next day, we want that material basically all packaged up. So I think that's a case where a press release would work. I mean, if you're a bigger firm, or just basically, a description of factual information, the credits, photo credits too, making sure that there are some photo credits. I want to know that I can use these images for free. There are sometimes some firms, not as much anymore, that will send you images that they don't have the rights to, and then you publish them, and it gets a little hairy. So that's not a good thing.
Yeah, and I would just add too that the press release as a medium, it's not just large corporate companies with marketing teams that can make these. If you're new to marketing or to PR, press releases don't have to be long, just a page with a great image. And just having a press release will really make your pitch go above and beyond, as opposed to an email with a link to an image somewhere. So it's a simple thing that is for free. You can go on Google and Microsoft and just get a template. And then, but it immediately just makes your pitch sort of that much better, I would say.
And it elevates the... Interesting. Yeah. That's so interesting. Yeah, I could see that. It looks more thoughtful, more thought out. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I think we have a question from someone at home. Yeah. So one of the questions is, with photography, is there something about photography and credits that is overlooked or that you should be careful about?
Well, I guess it's not the credit question. Yeah, we want to know who to credit. We want to know if you have the rights. But beyond that, project photography, we really like photography with people. We like photography that, if it, it doesn't have to have a lot of people, but or signs of occupation, like a building without any, an office building with an empty office floor is not so appealing. But if it has desks and it looks like people are using it, even if there aren't people there, that
Yeah,
works.
so it's very interesting because there's some magazines you'll see that they don't like people in them. They just want it to be really clean, sterile. Sometimes there's some photographers who specialize that. And then there's some magazines that also like the people. They want it to be active. So, for example, if it's a restaurant, for example, they actually want some people. They don't want it so many people that you can't see the interior. One peeve that I don't like that is sometimes still happening with some architectural photographers is the blur, the person who is blurring
It
through.
feels very dated.
I feel like that's kind of dated, and it really bothers me. So
Also with the car lights whizzing by,
yes,
that's
yeah.
You
It's
two are
a
so
long
not
exposure.
artistic.
It's
Yeah.
long. I don't mind that, but
I don't mind that either.
You're seeing the
But
differences
those
here.
are like, just personal
Yeah.
pet peeves, yeah.
yeah. But I mean, sometimes it's challenging. Like, of course, a school you need release. You need to get releases to shoot kids. So I don't know, bring in your own kids. But yeah, we like people. Blurry people is okay.
Yeah, a lot of times those people are the photographer's friends.
Yeah. Or I know one photographer who brings several shirts to a shoot, and he puts himself in the photos, and he.
I mean, it is kind of important. I remember
Yeah.
getting a pitch from a firm that was talking about a community, an African American community that they had done this really beautiful library or community center for, but all the people in the picture were the photographer's friends. And so you're like, the story that you're telling isn't matching up with, the photos you're telling aren't matching up with the photos, so with the story. So we couldn't take the story. But so, visualizing what that story is that you want to talk about and the way that you use those photographs, I think are important. I do think you should do two types, one without and one with. The other thing is to think long-term as well. Are you going to stay with the same photographers, let's say, so that when your book comes out in a couple of years, as it should, about your work, that there is this continuity with the work itself.
And also think about what publication you hope to pitch to. I mean, probably not an architecture firm would probably commission architectural photography, but I do get a lot of pitches for restaurants and things, and the photography is of the food, and that's really not. It makes I'm sitting at my desk getting hungry, but it's not what we're looking for. So,
what does a good long-term relationship with an editor look like? It's not me, it's you.
I have a friend who's in PR. Actually, well, there's two examples. I have a friend who's in PR for a large architecture firm, and she regularly reaches out for us to get breakfast or coffee. We live nearby, which helps. And I say this because I'm not after a free meal, but it's helpful to catch up on a regular basis about once a year, because we happen to live in the same city as well, and not necessarily talk about work. And this is always a tricky one, because I don't want to feel like you're inviting me to breakfast so that you just sort of, putting me up, or what's the expression, I'm after an authentic relationship, and you can only figure that out after spending some time with them. But that's always nice. And then there's an architect who will often actually text me on my way here. He saw that I'm on this panel, and he wished me good luck, which was really lovely. And there's no agenda behind. I guess authenticity is what I'm after, which is so hard to actually gauge, but yeah.
So how do you do that? How do you pitch a story where you want it to be in more than one, and Arc Record is saying, we want the exclusive on that, and Arc Newspaper is saying, we're ready to publish it right now. and Fast Company is saying, we want it in our special issue on innovation, what do you do?
I guess transparency, right? As long as you tell me you have been chatting with X editor in X magazine and they want to publish on X day, then it's for me to decide whether if there is no exclusive in place, it's for me to decide whether I want to rush or whether I'm okay with this being published in, say, a trade mag, and then I can publish it in a more mainstream mag, and that's okay. I think just transparency is kind of, the key word.
So I think, too, the takeaway, too, is how can you take your project, which you spent a couple years on, and slice and dice it in different ways, that there are more than one way of telling stories about it. Maybe it's a technical detail, and you have some technical issues, or you have like your facades conference. Those are different ways of pitching that. Do you do like technical details?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's sometimes I find like in a bigger project, maybe it's really interesting use of brick or something like that, where the story could still be covered, from one of the magazines, but then there's still another step there.
Yeah. I mean, it does get tricky, and often people pitch it and they're like, well, we can offer you these 5 exclusive images, and so it's the same building from a slightly different angle. It's like, well, our readers will think they've seen it elsewhere. So I don't, but yeah, transparency is always appreciated, and sometimes we'll opt to publish something that's going to appear as already appeared elsewhere, but often not. Yeah, it depends.
Is it okay to follow up? And if so, how and when?
It's definitely okay to follow up. First rule of thumb, don't take it personally if we don't answer within a month, sometimes 2 months. Our inboxes are just inundated. But it's certainly okay to follow up.
Maybe not the following day.
Not the following day. That will irritate.
I'm
But
just
I would say a
calling.
week.
I'm just calling to see if you received my email. Good or bad?
We did.
Did you say calling?
Yeah.
No, don't call.
Oh, never call.
Don't call me.
Please. I would say a week. Yeah.
Also, don't message people on LinkedIn when they don't respond to your email.
And on Instagram, especially.
Oh my God, yes.
That's a real pet peeve for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, no pictures on Instagram,
Yeah.
please. Yeah.
I don't mind the pitches on LinkedIn. Like if you're a first time, if you don't have my email, and you're like, hey,
Sure.
I'd like to pitch you or talk to you. I think that's okay.
Yeah, and I would add it's absolutely fine and welcome to pitch the Architects newspaper on Instagram, but not editors' individual personal accounts, I would say.
Yeah, it is funny because once you get to know people, they're pitching you on text, email, calling, WhatsApp, LinkedIn. Yeah.
But that's different when you have interacted, right? Whereas some random brand or architecture firm sliding into my DMs does not stand out to me. In fact, I probably ignore it.
So
as a
what's the
result.
difference between persistent and being spammy? Joanne.
It's a very fine
My mood
line.
that
I'm
day.
not sure. Yeah. Yeah, I would say often it's.
It's hard. I recently came across a person's LinkedIn, I think it was a PR, who was saying that she followed up with a journalist 6 times, and the takeaway was, don't give up, because on the 6th time, I got their attention, and here's the story that we published. And that worked in that particular instance. It might not work. 6 is probably too many. I feel like if you pitch someone consistently and don't hear back about different stories, so if you pitch a different story consistently and never hear back, maybe don't pitch more than twice, because clearly there's some sort of misalignment that you might not be aware of. So read the room, I guess.
Okay, what's one thing that small or emerging firms do better than large firms?
Social media presence.
Okay.
That's a good one. Yeah, I feel like they often large firms are sort of machines, and so I think smaller firms are often much more personal in their pitches.
Yeah, I was going to say relationship building.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said about a small firm, the same person from a small firm, in the case that I'm thinking of, the co-founder, reaching out every year when a new project comes live. That personal touch, that it's always the same person, so I recognize the name. It might have to do with budgets, right? That they don't have a budget to hire a PR firm or a consultant or whatever. But in this case, it actually helps them stand out. They're just better at remembering even what we talked about last time and checking in. I think it's really nice.
We have a column called Next Progressives, where we highlight the work of young and emerging firms. And I remember having one small firm from Mississippi reach out to us, and the work was really solid. And what I loved about them was that they were doing the local museum, and then that got them the town hall. These kinds of things that an emerging firm in New York would, take years to get. And it was kind of, innocent in the sense where you ask them these questions and what is your, favorite reading material? And I remember their answer was Martha Stewart Living, that was the magazine. You imagine in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, that they're getting inspiration from. But the work was super, super solid, and it was really nice to see the kind of work that they're doing. So, that's something too. I will say with a lot of the emerging firms, they're coming out of Yale and they're coming out of Harvard, and their first project is their parents' house, or there's this kind of, I guess you would say, privilege to some of the work. So it's a challenge, and we try and give everyone a chance. But it's challenging because some of those emerging firms, they're so small, they don't know what to do.
Yeah. Well, and on the topic of emerging firms, so Record has this long-standing program called Vanguard, and it is a contest. And generally, it's for practices that are 10 years or younger, and it has an application that's fairly formulaic and a deadline, and a small application fee. But that, as opposed to just pitching, if you enter the contest, someone will definitely look at your entry, as opposed to if you send an email and I might miss it, I might delete it by accident, I might.
But that's because it's a concerted effort for a certain issue, right?
Yes, it's I think a June issue, and that deadline, I'm not sure if the deadline has passed for this year or not. I'm not up on it, but we have several issues that are contests like that, record houses, record interiors. So they're all on our website.
I will say, wink, wink. Arc Record tends to be a little more inclusive as to age, because I've seen some of their emerging firms to be kind of old. Old. They're
right. I mean, we say around 10 years old, but I mean that doesn't if you're 50 and you establish your firm when you were 40, that still counts.
Whereas I think
right.
Architects newspaper, you also have the 50 architects, and you also have
interior.
AN interiors.
Yeah.
So you want to give a plug about that?
Sure. So we have sort of two spread across our interior design magazine, AN Interior, and the Architects newspaper print publication. In AN Interior, we have a yearly top 50, where we try to highlight emerging interior design talent. And then in our 20 to watch, which I'll plug, we have They just came in today, fresh off the press, our newest print issue. In our 20 to watch edition, we plug 20 emerging great, mostly residential architects in New York. And so, yeah, most of the firms that we highlighted this year were founded around 2010 or so. Yeah.
What's one underused opportunity for architects to get published today? Okay, so I'll say something. So I think social media is really important. I think Instagram is something that like I'll spend time looking at. And in fact, before I even reach out to you, I'm gonna go to your website or go to your Instagram. I may start following you, a year before I even reach out to you. So I think, and then also on your website, I appreciate that your website is up to date. You can see a lot of firms will do a redesign, spend a lot of money into that, and then suddenly it hasn't been updated since 2019. That is a fact. Go and check that out. 2019. I guess people were doing a lot of redesign of websites then. But having the basics on of your projects as they're finished, I think is interesting because I may be doing a roundup on multi-housing, right? And I'll go and see that you've done some good work. And then I may reach out to you for a quote on something or to talk about, where are we going with the housing crisis. But I would say Instagram is a big thing.
And also, I guess, engaging with the discourse on Twitter or X, whatever. Us journalists often spend time on, or at least I do, I have to spend time scrolling on Twitter to find what people are talking about. And so if there's, I'm gonna have to think of an example now. I don't have one, but if there's some sort of big,
like the fires in LA.
The what?
Fires in LA.
Yeah, right? Like everybody was talking about this at some point. And so if one opinion or hot take stands out, then I will probably reach out to that architect. I might just link to them, which is potentially good enough, but also I might reach out and see what else they have to say. And in that case, it's more of a thought leadership situation than featuring somebody's project, but it's a one way to get mentioned.
Sometimes I'll publish a project, and I may use the Instagram image or feed inside the story as well. So, looking at Instagram, more than I would say Twitter, more than TikTok, I would say, even though there's a lot of people who are active on TikTok.
It's true that we don't know what we don't know. So if your project is not online and you feel like you've been really innovative recently and you've done all this cool creative work, but it's nowhere for me to see, yeah, I won't see it.
Yeah, well, and in our other panels, we'll be talking about like sort of digital opportunities, like for thought leadership, and also just the way that you can start using new ways of using film and video and media like that. So that's going to come up in is it number 2 or number 3? Number 3. Sorry. Yeah. Anything else about an underused opportunity?
Yeah, I just want to build off on your point about establishing thought leadership and sort of how journalists scan Twitter, Instagram for scoops. Just today, we got a really interesting pitch from a PR firm that's representing a landscape architect that after Bad Bunny's halftime Super Bowl performance wrote this really impassioned Instagram post about the symbolism embedded within Bad Bunny's performance and the casitas and the light poles and unpacking what everything meant. And then this PR company that we work with all the time said, this post is getting a lot of traction. A lot of people are paying attention to it. Would you be interested in turning this into an op-ed somehow? And we said yes. And so, yeah, I think just the point that I'm trying to make is that finding your sweet spot and establishing yourself in a position of thought leadership, we'll think of you whenever the chance arises, for sure.
I just want to go back a little bit to when you're talking about websites and updating them. For projects, it's really helpful to have the who, what, where, when, why as part of. I mean, don't expect like a whole article, but if you have a tab that's about for projects or portfolio or work, it's very helpful to have that. I was looking at if you have a recently completed tall building, I'm looking for some. But I was looking at Architect's website today, and I was like, and there were some of the facts that I really wanted to know, like when the project was completed, was not included on the website. So
This is a big one.
yeah, and I was like, I just really want to. I mean, I could probably Google all of the projects to try to figure out, but it was like, oh, I can't do that. I don't have time for that. But if one was completed, last year, that might be new enough for us. We're probably all very focused on something that's new. So I wanted to know how new it was.
Okay, so what is your limit to new? Is it a year? Is it 2 years?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's a stretch.
yeah, that's a stretch. And 2 years and it hasn't been published. 2 years. 2 years. It depends on the project type. Like if it's a house and it's 2 years old and it hasn't been published, yeah. But if it's a library and it's 2 years old and it hasn't been published, if it's a civic project, it seems like it's like.
Yeah, I agree. 2 is even too much, frankly. Even though I wish it were different, especially if it's not published, right? Like, why not? Technically, but
How about in your competition? I know we're going to do something in competitions, but I think our competitions for houses is 3 years. Do you know what yours are for competitions?
I'm not sure that spells it. I don't think our application. It asks the application definitely asks when the house was completed, but I'm not
Right.
sure in the application that we specify that
neither do we.
there's something that's too old. But
Yeah.
yeah, Fast Company has some design awards. It is more design than architecture focused, but it is within last year. So it is usually quite a tight timeline.
Let's come back to editorial calendars because I think they are important. Frequently, I may get a pitch from someone that will say, your editorial calendar will be, let's say, every month, what you're planning to cover in the magazine, maybe online, maybe there's a conference that you do every year. And you'll get that sense that maybe help me, like your Milan coverage for products maybe is in April because that's when the Milan Fair is. And you may do something in March as a preview, and then in April or maybe in May you're doing the follow-up. And so that helps you to guide your pitch. What would you say, what else would you add to that would make that using the editorial calendar in a good way as a helpful tool?
I would say that the editorial calendar is only part of it. I would say, you've already made this point, but please look at the publication, the website, our website, and the print publication or the digital facsimile of the print to understand the relationship between the two and when we say, it's a buildings type study on tall buildings, what that means, what we're looking for. We're not, that we're looking for tall building projects as opposed to, some other kind of feature about tall buildings.
I'm not sure what I have anything to add.
Okay. Let's talk about we've been talking about pitching the editorial staff. There's also freelance writers. let's talk about that. So how do you deal with your freelance writers, and should firms be pitching freelance writers? I mean, you're a freelance writer who will then pitch the magazine. You want to start? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say if you are dead set on a particular publication, if you're dead, and we can argue about this later, but if you're dead set on Architect's newspaper and you have a relationship with them, don't go through me. If you don't have a relationship with them, possibly you could go through me, but you have to be prepared for me to go, I don't think that's a good story for them. I might pitch it to, this is super relevant right now because we're talking about so-and-so. I think Wired would love this. I think if you're pitching a freelance writer and you're not prepared and you want to control the narrative too much, then don't pitch a freelancer. Sorry, don't pitch. Wait, if you want to,
you're right.
yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's my main advice.
Yeah. If you want to control the narrative too much, you probably. I mean, you should be.
You can never.
Yeah. Yes. You should be prepared to you pitch a story and you agree to publish it, and then you have to you can facilitate it, but not control it. Yeah.
I have heard from some other magazines where the PR people have found pitching the writer was a better way to get a story in that magazine because the writer came with the package. So it was easy for the editor to say, okay, you're pitching me the story. I like the story. Oh, you want to write it? Okay, it's done.
As in they don't have to hire then another editor to write it. Yeah, another writer.
Whereas the danger with that, I think, is sometimes I'll get a pitch from a writer whose writing I don't like. And because they're pitching me that project, ethically, if they've pitched me first, it's kind of like their pitch. And it's their project that they're shopping around. So I have to sort of respect it. But I wouldn't tell them, I really don't like your writing, so I'm not gonna. No, right. I'm gonna say no, but you may lose that project.
I have to say, with pitching freelancers as well, I'm trying to think if this has happened to me. It may have happened to me. I'm trying to decide. Basically, the advantage is you might get 2 stories out of it. But it may have never happened, so never mind. Forget what I just said. I don't think that's ever happened. That's too good to be true.
Yeah. And for record, we're more likely to use, we often get pitches from freelancers in New York. And of course, our whole editorial staff is based in New York. So we don't, if it's a project we already know about, often they're pitching us projects we already know about. So they're already on our radar. We're already thinking about covering them. But probably we often, not that we never use New York-based freelancers, but we would often cover them ourselves. So we're more likely to, be open to pitches from freelancers outside New York. But then again, it's similar. If sometimes we don't like the writing, or we don't think they're the right voice for a certain project, then it gets tricky.
And on the geography note, I guess it's helpful to pitch a writer who's based in the city where the project is. I got a pitch today about and I can't even give you the details because I glossed over it. It's some new development in Tulsa. And although I have written about Tulsa before, I don't have the knowledge that a local reporter would have. So I have said before, I love this story, but I don't feel like I can do it justice. And so that's when I say no. In that case, pitching another freelance writer who is based there, who can then pitch you with the local knowledge would probably increase your chances of getting published.
What are some ways to build relationships slowly with editors? Okay, I'll give you one. Follow them on like LinkedIn. So that's one way where you start, because a lot of times as an editor, I'll post my stories, or I have my social media team posting my stories. So it's a way to see what I'm thinking about, what I'm sharing. I think that's interesting. Anything else?
Yeah, if your name pops up on social media often, then I'll start to recognize you and then recognize your name in my inbox, which is helpful. I always struggle with this one because it's hard to build an authentic relationship in a dynamic where one is inevitably expecting something out of the other.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tricky. I mean, there have been times where I've been burnt because, I've gotten maybe too close to an architect or the PR team representing them, and then I do a lot of investigative journalism about real estate in New York. Sometimes people aren't cast in necessarily the best light. So I've come to find that I really prefer to have a buffer in order for me to maintain my journalistic integrity.
A buffer being a PR firm, you mean?
Just the doors are always open, but just between myself and architects, and it's tricky.
You have to have a little distance.
A little distance.
Yeah.
I think that they're not saying this, but I think editors love when you read what they publish.
Yes.
So, that's important. The other thing too is, sharing relevant insights sometimes. So if there's, let's say, an article maybe that Dan or Joanne wrote, and then maybe there's something else to add to the picture, like, hey, I just saw this project in so-and-so. So you're not promoting yourself, but you're becoming an expert that helps the editor. I think eventually that will help you down the road, where they may actually come back to you and say, hey, you really know, multi-housing really well, or solutions for homelessness. We're doing a story, like, what do you have? Or, can I quote you on something?
Yeah. I don't mind when people, like, when I get an email and say, I just read your piece on blah blah, and I have this project. I don't mind that, but as long as, like, your project is kind of taking whatever theme it was a step further, or somehow builds on the ideas of that story, rather than, I have gotten pitches where I just read this and I think this is relevant, my project, and it was like, I don't see the connection between, anyway.
Or it's too similar.
Yeah.
Loved your piece on this. I have something similar.
Right. It's like, I'm not going to cover that ground again. Right.
Yeah, I have something similar, but this is what's also different.
Yeah.
Right? This is what continues that conversation. So, like, LA fires again. Someone may see that you publish this story on one building. What's the evolution? What's another example that you can continue that conversation? I mean, sustainability is, I think, wired part of everyone's DNA now, but, how can you continue to evolve that conversation? I think we have time to open it up to questions. So let's start. We got a number, so I'm going to start first, the second lady in the second row.
Hi.
Oh, and we have a microphone. And ask questions, not make statements.
Is this working?
It is.
Yes.
Okay, my first question is, magazines have changed a lot in the last 10 years or even sooner. And the question I have is really about, what do you change for your audience? Because in the olden days, part of the reason that you wanted to get published is so you can get more clients and everybody could know how great your buildings are, which they can't see. So you'd get really nice pictures because people can't really get into them afterwards, and you could show it to people. But things have changed now. And have you changed, what are you doing in the magazines in order to create, because mostly the audience of record is professionals, and it's mostly architects looking at other architects' work. So, when you use it for getting clients, they don't really often read it. And you have to send them the reprints. But is there a way you can kind of reach out more? And if we're doing that, do you want to change how you position the pieces so you can reach out? And there's, the general public and future clients are really an additional audience that most of the magazines don't get. And I'm wondering what you're thinking about doing to get it broader.
Who wants to start first?
It seemed to be directed at me.
I love record.
But yes, it's true. I mean, well, it's not really an answer to your question, but you have to think about who you're trying to reach when you pitch a story. Because it is true that if you pitch a story in record, mostly reaches your peers. I mean, that's
fine.
That's true. So, but, we have a very active website. You can, if you're published in record, you can always send the link to the story to your client. You can publish it on your own website. You can push it out on social media. I would think that but still our core audience, I don't know the statistics. I mean, we do have institutional owners and clients and developers also that read the magazine, but I think our core audience is still architects. And, does that answer your question?
Yeah, as magazines have changed so much, and it used to be a rite of passage that if you got you got yourself into record, you had made it. And I don't know if that's the same anymore, except within the profession. Everybody talks about social media, but I'm kind of wondering what the next level is on, how do we make our profession more accessible to people who aren't in the room?
Yeah, I mean, I think the writing exists somewhere but it's a professional publication, but I think it's accessible to a broader audience. So it's not full of lingo, jargon.
When I advise firms, who are saying like, how do I get published? And, I'm very free with, promoting my competitors, but I will also say like, why aren't you pitching this story or thinking about pitching a story to Fast Company or the Wall Street Journal or other non-trade publications? Because I think it's also about your expertise as a firm. What is it that you do that is so innovative? And I think it's not just about the typology, right, that you want to get published, but you want to be known for doing something innovative, whether it's sustainability or community building or something else that just goes beyond the plain project. We have a question. The next row here, we'll then go there, and then we'll start this way. So.
Hi. First of all, thank you all so much. I'm glad that the question of the audience came up because I was wondering if there's a certain type of story or certain projects that you find your readers really responding to, or projects or stories that you see a lot of like buzz around or conversation around. I think sometimes when pitching these things and then seeing them get published, it's kind of like, okay, well, like who is talking about it now? Does it go past the published work into some sort of like larger discourse? And then I had a really quick question for Daniel. You mentioned that you see smaller firms utilizing social media better. So I was just curious to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I in our latest A&N Interior issue, there are a lot of really great small firms. One of my favorite projects in there is a new bar that just opened in Ridgewood. It stands out. It's underneath the train track, and it has this really great red glass block. And this image has gotten 12,000 likes on Instagram. And it's like this, anyways, not to digress, but there's always this conversation, especially in architecture now, making architecture to perform well on social media versus making just great architecture overall. There's just a I can send you the issue and point you in the direction of some younger, mostly interior firms that are just like straddling the line between like really great practice and also really great social media presence. It's much easier to just give some examples. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have someone from Dada Goldberg, who in the third panel that we'll be talking about social media, and she does PR. She does the digital social media for Kelly Wearstler, and I think if you look at Kelly Wearstler and how she uses film, like she'll go into an interior, a raw interior space, and sort of draw on it. And she does this kind of like amazing use of social media. She's someone who I've seen go from like 1 million to 5 million followers. But there's a lot of stuff that you can learn from someone who like herself, who really understands how to use social media as a tool to communicate, not just show your project.
Yeah, I also saw something really interesting recently out of KPF. One of the principals there, I'm not sure how it transpired, but they got linked with a social media content producer. The content producer learned that this particular individual had a lot of knowledge about cooperative housing and public housing, and so they filmed themselves walking throughout Parkchester in the Bronx, and they did a walking tour of the history of Parkchester. And it was this beautiful video, and it got a lot of attention. And immediately, sort of, when we were talking about thought leadership, I learned something about this particular principle that I didn't know about, and just said, wow, he's really knowledgeable about cooperative housing, which is something I care a lot about. And so, I'm slowly starting to see more mid and large firms working with social media content producers and doing some really interesting stuff. So,
yeah, and that's something too. Every story we publish, we share on social media, because increasingly people aren't necessarily coming to your website, but they want their information, shared, and then they come, through a link or something like that. In the back there, yeah, and then we'll come on that side.
You've talked a lot about covering projects. I'm wondering about covering books. I think you all cover books in one way or another.
Yes. I mean, we do cover books. We'll do excerpts of books. We'll do review. I was just on the phone today with great architect Danish Karani. And I said I'm going to tell Dan about the book so that he can also write about it, and then I'll tell Joanne about it too. But yes, books are really important. So you can do a review. I have a columnist who does, Aaron Betsky, who really does very interesting reviews. Sometimes he'll rip something apart, and sometimes he loves something. So, buyer beware. But we'll do roundups as well. Books are really important, an important tool.
Yeah. And just one follow-up. There are about 1,000 architecture books published each year. So I just wanted to do the same thing that you were talking about projects, how you make the decision which ones to focus on.
So sometimes we'll do it by subject matter. Like a lot of firms are doing, great project books on houses. Otherwise, I think sometimes we like to have the mix of interesting idea-driven books rather than just project, like Ramza, Bob Stern. Here's, the version, number 16. I don't necessarily think we might do that one. But his book on New York, 2000, amazing book. It's so sad he passed away just after it was published.
Yeah, in that print issue that we have there, it's mostly we typically don't review monographs. That's just not in our wheelhouse. But there's a great book that just came out by Jack Morley called Dream Facades. That's In case you're not familiar with Jack, Jack is at Dwell, and it's the intersection of architecture and reality TV. And it's really interesting media theory happening there. Another book that we recently reviewed was Sam Bloch's Shade, which is making the case about shade as being an integral human universal right, like water and air. And so, yeah, really ideas-forward books, I would say, are in our wheelhouse.
Yeah, I also reviewed Sam's book, and so that goes to say how relevant it was.
And Sam's not an architect,
Right.
but huge impact for architects.
Yeah. And I'm going to second the ideas idea because the ideas point. I recently covered a book by KPF actually that came out a couple months ago, and I got a digital galley, like a PDF of the full thing, and one particular category stopped me in my tracks, and it was this sort of speculation of what New York City could be, but it was really grounded in reality. And that story kind of wrote itself. It was like, what could New York look like? In this case in particular, it was about the delivery problem, right? Like just the millions of trucks and the carbon emissions that come out of those trucks to deliver the goods that we order in one click on Amazon. And so how could the city be redesigned to better accommodate that? That story was just there. And so I called up the architect, and then the story came out. So it wasn't the whole book. It wasn't a full review. It was literally 5 pages within the book, but they got the press out of it, and I got a great story.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the similar record that we'll do. Mostly idea-driven reviews of mostly idea-driven books. We'll do excerpts, and we do roundups, and they're often thematically, like last year, the houses issue we had a roundup of books about houses, and a lot of them were monographs. But yeah, normally we don't. Otherwise, we don't normally do monographs. But
long term, I think you, as a firm, you should think about the photography you use, the photographer you use repeatedly. Like, will this make their way into a book down the road in a couple years?
Yeah, excuse me. Nice to see you all. I think you've answered this question to some extent in the discussion on social media, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So, we get a lot of our news and our information from you all, aside from social media and aside from us. Like, where are you getting information? What are you reading? Where are you looking to find what's happening?
AP News, Reuters, Twitter. Generally speaking, for me at Fast Company, it's what is the general audience talking about, and is there a design lens that I can expand on or add to? That's my answer.
Yeah, we're checking New York City's press officers. Like the Canarsie story that we published today was just from the New York City press release news site. So a lot of like the really great smaller projects that we get are mostly from the New York City mayor's office or something.
yeah, and I'm not a user of Twitter or X, but Instagram often I see things on Instagram. Firms post things, and I'm like, oh, that looks interesting.
My company is a tech company that owns us. And they do research in the housing field, so very data driven. I have like an RSS feed that really sends everything in architecture to me every day that I'm looking through. Reddit on the architecture is really good, especially for scandals. And, if you want to know, if there's some union issues with firms like Big and
Glassdoor.
Yeah. So you can really go there to hear like what some news is that you can then come back to either the source and question them about that. So it really is, across the board. I will say the FT weekend, I really love going to Casa Magazine, buying it, bringing it home and reading it. Very old fashioned. I mean, it's a little on the luxury side, but I do think some of that coverage there is pretty good. The old Wall Street Journal, magazine, I thought, was very good with Christine O'Neill's coverage of architecture and design. They're now a little more celebrity-driven, but they're hiring, design editors. They're looking for a design editor to have a weekly column. So there is an opportunity out for you there, which is sort of rare in the field. But I like to read. I like to read it all, and then it's the network, of the people that ultimately, if there's an issue where you're like, and that's where PR firms are good too. If you have a good relationship with them, but if there's a topic, with an expert that you want to know about, reaching out to your network is really important.
Yeah, and I would just add here, I have a lot of friends who are academics and professors, and that's where I get a lot of my stories from too, on Instagram, because I've come to find that academics are typically the sort of canaries in the coal mine when it comes to like a big story that's breaking or something like that, because as architects, as professionals, it's really easy to keep your head down, but it's the academics that are the ones that are like really, they have their fingers on the pulse, so I try to always follow what they're doing. Yeah.
University websites as well, right? Like MIT Press always comes out with crazy projects that are, again, maybe more design than architecture, but there's a lot of material innovation stories in there. Yeah.
Which is something too, I know we're going to discuss it in another program, but it's that issue of expertise, research, thought leadership. I really think that's a very important part of really evolving your firm, because if you're an expert in something, then we come back to you, we trust you in the projects that you design. So not just, beautiful, descriptive kind of projects.
Hi, I'm a communication strategist for architects. Hello, architects.
Yeah.
So for context, I used to run communications for BRK Ingalls Group, and I think we've exchanged a few emails, Joanne, in my old days. And now I'm building a community of architect makers. These are architects who are exploring craftsmanship, materials, and product design. And so my question is, repping these emerging / undiscovered architects is quite different from pitching stories from a company like Big. And so I wonder if you might have advice for when you come across these emails from architects you've never heard of before, if there's something about it that stands out to you or captures your attention just a little bit more. And this is, of course, assuming we've covered all your 5 whys and do all the standards required for a pitch email. If you have any tips around that.
Does anybody else want to? I mean,
I love small architecture firms and emerging firms. I actually have made a point. Are there any famous architects in here?
yeah. Yeah.
I have made a concerted effort in my career to try not to cover Big and Heatherwick and whoever else, and if I do, it's to criticize them. So I don't need to be convinced in any different way of the quality or value of the project if there's value to the project. I think the size of the firm or the fact that I don't know them actually is appealing to me, and I don't. Yeah, I would treat that pitch in the exact same way. My point is that I think there's. What's my point? Like, it doesn't matter, is my point.
Yeah, and the way you've presented it already sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
Architect makers. Just pitch it. Send some images, but make sure it's not such a big email.
Yeah, so I would say, for example, like the Chicago Architecture Biennial is a place where you would see, especially in recent years versus the early ones, where architects are maybe working on an installation, using maybe a new technology and making something kind of sculptural, kind of unfinished. And that's something where I think that piques my interest, where I want to learn more about about this firm. So sometimes not always having to do built projects, but unbuilt ones are kind of interesting, especially because they are really pushing the boundaries of what architecture can be and should be. And so I think in that direction, younger firms or really ones that have not been published before, I kind of give them, someone couldn't make it, an architect couldn't make it. She said she was a mom, so it was hard to come by a young firm. So I said, we'll do a Zoom. And I'll talk to her about, what she wants to pitch in some way or what she's trying to achieve in the field. I think it's our duty, to really promote young and emerging firms. The bigger the firm, the bigger the PR machine. So I'm less interested too. In some ways, you mentioned Bjarke. I remember in 2006 meeting Bjarke in Copenhagen, and he was on a bike, and I was on a bike, and we went bike riding to a bar where all the architects hung out, and he was not famous then. And then I remembered when he was in the New Yorker and got his piece, the next time he would do a piece, it would be, in the New Yorker. So how do you compete with that? He's going to get that kind of machine of the PR machine, and he is a great PR machine himself, a great communicator. But they're also... Well, he's there, but, as reported to in the Architects newspaper 2 days ago, they're under criticism for the union.
Yeah, London.
Yeah,
London
London. So,
office.
there's good and bad. Do we have someone in the back there?
One quick question. What about products? What's the best way to submit a new product or innovative material?
So I think that's really, that really is an important arm of a lot of publications, especially trade publications. So let's go through that just very quickly.
So reach out to us. Our brilliant design editor is Kelly Powell. We have a yearly Best of Product Award where, Kelly and other esteemed jurors are doing just that. So I'll happily share my contact information with you, and I'll connect you.
And I would look at our editorial calendar, because we have products pages every month, and they're generally organized around a specific
product highlights.
Yes, like building envelope or ceilings or something. So I would look and see if there's a particular month where we're planning to feature that, and then also if it's an innovative product and it has been, used in some really interesting project to solve an interesting problem, maybe we would do. Those products pages are like they're, a photo and a paragraph. But if it's really innovative, solving some big problem, maybe we would do something more on it. That would kind of depend.
I like it when a lot of architects will actually do products and showcase it at some of the trade shows, even if it's a prototype. It is a way to get yourself published. It is another arm of the architectural practice. So I think products are really important to the whole equation. Is there any others? One here in the blue.
Hi, thank you all. I have a question about social media to getting published. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on the line about sharing about a project and then hoping to get it published, sharing behind the scenes. How much can you tease where you won't want to publish it if it's already posted about finished? Is that true? Where would you say the line is?
If a project is on Instagram, to me, that doesn't count as published. In fact, it just helps me see it, right? If it shows up on my feed. I guess it depends on, I don't see a reason why you wouldn't publish? Would some magazines consider that as like a deal breaker? No, right?
No. I mean, not unless it was picked up by a whole bunch of news outlets, or if you put all of your photos on Instagram and you had a gigantic following or something, then maybe yes. But
I guess if you were after a specific magazine and you're hoping that the editor from that magazine will see the post, then maybe just reach out to them straight, like directly, because otherwise some other magazine is going to see it first, and you're going to have to decide whether you want to hold out for that other magazine. But otherwise, I think visibility is great, and yeah, we all get our stories, many of our stories from Instagram. So I don't see why you wouldn't. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I've been told in the past that it was stealing the story to some degree.
I think it just depends. Sorry to be so wishy-washy. Yeah.
Okay. And then one follow-up question. I work in landscape and was just curious about your definition of new, because so much of landscape takes a couple of years for it to come to its full growth, especially if it's a meadow and it's seedlings and things like that. And so I'm curious if the landscape is central to the story, if you would reconsider that timeline of 2 years.
So I would say, one of the evolution of architecture is the role of landscape architecture in the whole overall project. So I think very increasingly, a lot of the innovative projects that we call architecture really are the result of a collaboration with the landscape architecture and the landscape architect. And how is the site, how is remediation, how is sustainability, how is nature, all playing a role into this. So increasingly, it turns out that a lot of the stories that we're doing come as a byproduct where landscape architecture is an important part of the architecture story.
Even if the trees aren't fully grown, right? I mean, I think as long as the space is open to the public, at least for Fast Company, that would probably be the prerequisite. I covered a Pier 26 or 23, one of the new piers that opened on the west side, and many of the trees were not, I mean, they were not grown, and to your point, there was this was not the kind of landscape that you see in the render, but the story was there and the thing was open. People could discover it. You could go there, and then I could talk about how in 10 years this is how it's going to look like. And that was enough.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
We wouldn't want to wait till the landscape was mature. I mean, even though we realize, yes, that it's going to look better in a few years, but we probably, just the pressures to publish something when it's new are just too great. So we don't like it when there's like construction fences around the project, but if the trees are spindly and the ground cover is not robust, we would still probably want to publish it, at that stage.
The one last thing I guess I would add, it's maybe something for magazines to do a better job of, which is a lot of times we're waiting until the project is finished, and then we review it. And if it's bad, there's nothing you can do about it. And I would like to see more sort of criticism, ongoing criticism of projects before they're finished, where they're at the planning stage, where the architects, your experts, can weigh in, criticize it, make that project better. So that is something I hope that we somehow can all work together, where you guys can take some positive criticism and make a project better. The perfect example, if you look as a case study, is the Stephen Hall Library in Long Island City. When you saw the initial drawings that were published in the New York Times, beautiful watercolors, it was like being declared a masterpiece. And then magazine by magazine followed and said, this is all great. Even Architects Newspaper did it. And then someone who was in the Metropolitan, first of all, it was in Gothamist, just a regular reporter said, hey, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this. And then someone in the New York Times in the Metropolitan section said the same thing. and then suddenly all the architecture, including like New York Magazine, Justin Davidson, who had called it a masterpiece, said, "Hey, wait a minute! I always thought there was something wrong with this," and henceforth, the project is now was sued by the ADA community. There's remediation that has to be done, and it's a project where there was like a missed opportunity there. Okay, so one last question. Where's that? Okay.
Hi, this was really, really helpful. Thank you so much. My question is really a follow-up to this former, just right here, about the social media. In terms of photography, you guys mentioned exclusives, and how are attitudes changing towards exclusives for images? Should we be, it used to be we had to be so concerned not to put it on the website yet until it got published first in the, the magazine we really wanted it to be in. Now we're hearing you're looking for projects on social media. So could you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, if it's like a public project, there's nothing stopping me from going and taking a picture of like a museum, right, and publishing and writing about it. I'm not going to get, the inside, but I may want to make a statement about the project itself. But social media, I mean, we're digital only now, our magazine. I think it was a bigger problem when you're a print magazine because of the lag. And that's where, magazines are invested on like the cover, who's going to be on the cover, and what are those exclusive images that you're going to be using, which I think is something that a printed magazine, plays more importance on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we just don't want the whole story out there in advance. Like, I mean, yes, today I was trolling websites looking for tall buildings, but I wasn't looking for, a zillion pictures of it. I was like looking at a page of tall buildings, and I wasn't looking for the whole story to be spelled out to me, but I just wanted the facts and, one photo.
I'm curious, like with your exclusive, like if you have an exclusive, is it for the issue? Is it only until it's published? How do you deal with that?
How do we generally, we ask for like if it's going to be in the March issue, we want an exclusive until March 15th, or something, like not in perpetuity. No one else can publish it, ever. No, that would.
You can always negotiate, remember that.
Yeah. No.
I will also say it really depends on if a story or a project gets published in a trade magazine, it does not preclude you from pitching a mainstream magazine. We being Fast Company, they, I suppose, often, I don't want to put a frequency, but it does happen where a project is covered in one of your magazines, and then Fast Company puts a completely different spin on it, or the story, the readers are different, and so the focus is different, the angle is different, and it's okay. So I would remember that and not be scared if I place a story in Record and then go, oh my God, that's it.
But also just be transparent as.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I want to thank all the panelists. They want to kick us out. Tammy?
I just want to make a shameless plug for Oculus, since you're all New York architects. We're always looking for content and ideas, and we run op-eds in every issue. So if you have a great project, please send us your projects so we, Joanne, Paul, and I, and the other members of the committee sit around and talk about projects, and we're always looking for relevant projects for Oculus. So please do send us your ideas. Jen Critchels, who is our amazing editor-in-chief, her email is on the AIA New York website, so she's easy to reach. So please do send us your projects for Oculus as well. And then I just want to remind you, again, March 4th, recognition comes in many colors. Competitions, awards, and speaking opportunities is the next in the series. And then the final is on April 1st, and that's Dial Up Your Digital. non-traditional, and social media. And thank you all to our moderator and panelists, and thank you all for being here tonight.